And good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this very exciting segment today on the 29th day of November 2022. Well, it is 24 degrees and cloudy with occasional rain right here in Brisbane. Well, let's get on with the news for today. And breaking news, Australia's terror threat, the level has been lowered.
Inside ASIO's highly secure Canberra headquarters, the country's spy chief unveils a new direction.
After careful consideration and consultation, ASIO is lowering Australia's national terrorism threat level to possible.
When Islamic State burst onto the global scene 8 years ago, the national terrorism level was raised to probable. Since 2014, there have been 11 attacks in Australia and more than 20 others thwarted. With ISIS now largely defeated and its self-declared caliphate in the Middle East destroyed, ASIO believes the threat from religiously motivated violent extremists here has moderated. But
this does not mean the threat is extinguished. Far from it.
ASIO's taken into account the recent repatriation of ISIS-linked families from Syria, while also flagging concerns about the ever younger age of recruits here.
15, 14 years old who are radicalising through a range of different means.
The opposition's welcomed the threat downgrade and pointed to money and powers given to security agencies over the last decade.
It's a very positive step, and it does mean that Australia is a little bit safer.
The downgrading of Australia's official alert level also reflects a new reality that espionage and foreign interference have now overtaken terrorism as this country's #1 security threat. While that's an increasing focus for ASIO, the agency insists it's still devoting proper resources to combating violent extremists.
Yes, and of course that can never be totally discounted. So why did ASIO do this? Let's take a look at this report.
Well, I think there are several things at work here, Bev. One is that they're putting a lot of resources into counterterrorism and they're having success. Counterterrorism intelligence has been very effective. We see it through police, but it's a whole of government operation at detecting and disrupting. So what that means is that ambitious, large-scale plots are generally detected. People start communicating, they're found out and they're stopped. It doesn't stop lone actor attacks, but they tend to be smaller. Not always, of course. Remember Christchurch 2019. So that's the first thing. The second thing is any kind of risk level, alert level, is only effective if it moves in response to circumstances. If you don't move it, you stop paying attention. If your kitchen smoke alarm keeps beeping every day, you start to ignore it. The old adage about the boy crying wolf, and we ignore threats that are made repeatedly and we see nothing happening. So ASIO is hard at work and they are stopping bad things happening, but the public needs to sort of take a step back and be assured that they'll let us know when they have a particular problem.
Yeah. They do still warn, though, that there could be a deadly attack. So what necessarily should we be aware of as to where things are shifting?
Well, what ASIO has told us, that we go back half a dozen years and 10% of their counterterrorism work was on far-right extremism. Now more than half of their work's far-right extremism. That's more likely to manifest, as it did in Christchurch, with a lone actor attack, and as in the case of Christchurch, it can be very large scale, but it probably will be smaller scale. So they're saying we can't keep this elevated level going indefinitely because it's counterproductive, but we want to drop it back now so that if we have a particular concern, we can raise it and people will pay attention. Their concern, as they say, is about these lone actor attacks. So they've had, something like 30-odd attacks or attempted attacks since the Islamic State Caliphate in 2014, when the level was raised to probable. And that's not going to suddenly go away. It's just that things are under control. The counterterrorism intelligence piece is working, and that is good news, but this is a very resilient threat.
Yeah. And with that intelligence, it's working further afield, isn't it, as well? Not just here. You talk about New Zealand, you're looking at Indonesia. There is work being done and also cooperation among many nations to counter some of this.
That's right. I mean, for example, one of the most significant plots that was thwarted was that plot to blow up an Etihad aircraft out of Sydney. And in fact, the explosive devices was mailed by Turkish Air to Sydney It was picked up by Israeli agents in the field, picking up signals intelligence in Syria, and they alerted authorities back through the chain. And that's a good example of how this is, really an international exercise in cooperation. And of course, a lot of our focus is on Southeast Asia. We work very well with the Indonesians, and a lot more of our work will be done there offshore, but it's of concern to us, and it may affect Australians.
It seems too, though, Greg, that there is a much more silent threat that could be a little bit more insidious, and this is foreign interference, which is far more covert, but can be very, very damaging.
Yeah, it can be very damaging, Bev, partly because we just don't realise how bad it is at two levels. We don't realise what influence is going on, and secondly, we don't realise what intelligence and what capacity is being picked up. The biggest concern, to be frank, at the moment is what would happen if things really turned to custard with China. If there was action across the Taiwan Straits, how effective would Chinese cyber operations be? They're not going to tell us until they have to use it. We hope they'll never have to use it. But that's the nature of the uncertainty. They're developing, as other nation states do, but China's the particular concern here, the capacity to interrupt, and short of war, their actions will be done with plausible deniability. So it may look like an accident. It's often hard to pin down. But in times of war, we don't know what capacity can be brought to bear, and that's the real concern.
Yeah. I guess, therefore, very important that we're starting to see an easing and a thawing in relations between our two leaders.
That's right. It's the other side of the coin. I mean, we want to be prepared for aspects of war, partly as a deterrence, but we also want to work hard on diplomacy, because you can't do one or the other. I mean, this is not about talking up a threat just to make people panic. It's about taking things seriously, so we invest extra hard on the diplomatic people-to-people relations side, and hopefully that'll give us a better future for everyone, for the Chinese and for us.
A better future for everyone, and of course, as Pedret report, that we can't be too complacent about that. Well, right now let's go into Adelaide, where the Grand Prix returns, but the road closes. How do the locals put up with that?
Familiar scenes around the city's East End this morning. The Adelaide 500 is back, and so are the traffic jams.
I'm going to try a different route tomorrow.
I work right here and I can't even get to it. It's shocking, but it is what it is. It's once a year, so it's kind of nice to have people back in the city.
Those already in a rush, less forgiving.
I'm a bit overwhelmed. I'm almost late for work, so the government should do something about it.
The government's the one which brought the event back, to the delight of previous winner Nick Pearcat. He was one of the first to speak out when the former Liberal government scrapped the supercars from Adelaide, citing declining ticket sales.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see some shots of people a bit teary-eyed and stuff like that, because it does mean a lot to everyone in South Australia.
It's a bit of traffic inconvenience. Pales into total insignificance in comparison to the inconvenience that a lot of people are about to start experiencing in the Riverland and then Mannum. So try and keep a bit of perspective.
Just a few more finishing touches now before the event gets underway on Thursday morning, the last of the year for the Supercars Championship. It's a sentimental track for Adelaide-born Pearcat.
Every time I drive here, I kind of nearly get goosebumps, because it's kind of surreal still. I was walking in to come here today, and I said to my girlfriend, oh, that's a tree I used to sit in so I could see over the fence to watch, Scafie and Lowndes.
This weekend's race will also be the last to feature Holden vehicles before the brand departs supercars. As for those driving on the streets outside, they're being encouraged to leave more time for their travels over the next few days.
Maybe catch public transport if that's an option available to you, or just leave that bit earlier.
The final checkered flag drops on Sunday. Isabel Damon, ABC News, Adelaide.
And as we mentioned, there's always the two sides of the coin. The flip side is, yes, it's back. And it's wonderful to have it back. The locals, have to battle the traffic for at least a week, I'd say, leading up to the event. And by the time everything's taken off and everything gets back to normal. Well, right now, of course, the big news that came out yesterday is that the Nationals oppose the Voice to Parliament. Here's the report.
Those hopeful of bipartisanship on the Voice will have to think again.
We have to stop dividing our nation along the lines of race.
No one should feel any shame in voting no to this.
The Nationals declaring they'll oppose constitutionally enshrining an Indigenous voice to Parliament. Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price, a Warlpiri Celtic woman, arguing it'll only empower elites and won't deliver practical improvement to the lives of Indigenous Australians.
Why should I, as an Indigenous Australian, be governed under a separate entity than the rest of Australia?
It's a bit premature, really, and a bit inept. I don't see it as a setback, quite frankly. I think this is the beginning. The campaign hasn't even begun.
This decision by the Nationals is a disgrace. They're on the wrong side of history on this.
One Liberal firmly in support of the voice, very keen for opposition leader Peter Dutton not to follow the Nationals.
It's not a position that the Liberal Party needs to adopt.
This might prove to be a pivotal moment when it became clear that the referendum would have to defy the precedent of bipartisanship for it to succeed. The government won't be funding the yes or no campaigns, instead relying on the philanthropic and corporate sectors to make the case for the voice. Parliament splitting on another front. Labor's move to censure Scott Morrison for his multiple ministry moonlighting.
The actions of the former Prime Minister were extraordinary, they were unprecedented and they were wrong.
Why would we support something that's a sideshow? We've been very clear from the start. We've been very clear that Scott Morrison did the wrong thing. All of us have said that quite publicly. It's time to move on.
Scott Morrison going from electoral defeat headed for parliamentary dishonour. Andrew Probyn, ABC News, Canberra.
Such is life in politics. Well, right now, when you are in a power where you are given trust, especially in matters relating to wills, what would you do? Here's a report.
With a payout already in the bank and on the cusp of an inheritance, Chris Schroeder was about to become a millionaire. But just months after her partner died, the forensic psychologist decided that wasn't enough and tried to cut out the competition.
Your motivation in respect of the offending was either greed or a misguided sense of entitlement to the whole estate.
In 2016, Schroeder's partner of 21 years, Marie Hart, died of an aggressive brain cancer at this hospice, leaving a $2.5 million estate, including a house in Kew. Marie Hart wanted her partner to get a third of her fortune, while the other 2/3 were left to her niece and nephew. But the 61-year-old wanted more and penned her own version of the will, naming herself the sole beneficiary. It sparked a legal battle and a family skirmish.
I was denied access to the funeral, so was my mum. Our whole family was denied access to speaking.
Schroeder was today sentenced to 4 years behind bars in the County Court of Victoria after a jury found her guilty of repeatedly perjuring herself and attempting to pervert the course of justice.
You stood to inherit significant funds from the estate and you sought more.
To be honest, I feel like I failed her because we didn't get her wishes met.
Chris Schroeder today appeared in court by video link from prison wearing a white t-shirt and transition lenses. She closed her eyes and shook her head as she was sentenced. She can apply for parole in 20 months. Danny Tran, ABC News, Melbourne.
So there you are, ladies and gentlemen. Right now, let's go to Western Australia, where the Western Australia Police Union is blasting the McGowan government for the latest pay offer.
First, the Nurses Federation. Now, the police union, both unhappy with the government's pay offer.
Government have failed to listen to one of our main items, which is the 5% per annum for both years. It's woefully short, it's disrespectful, and I heard that loud and clear yesterday at our workshop.
The difference? Police aren't planning on striking, unlike nurses and midwives. The Premier dismissing the Nursing Federation's latest suggestion a deal would cost an additional $36 million by raising allowances rather than baking in wage rises.
Do those figures check out to you, and would that be palatable?
No, they're wrong. Look, if we go to what they're asking for, it flows across the workforce, and that's at least another $2 billion.
The government sticking to its policy that a pay rise for one public sector workforce means a pay rise for all public sector workers.
It flows. There's no stopping that. So it flows, and that's over 4 years, which is how you budget these things. As I said before, our surplus is going down very significantly.
But Mark McGowan says there's room for other measures to sweeten the deal.
That's icing, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's icing.
Outside of wages, there's opportunity for negotiation, and there's been a lot of movement in that regard with this offer.
I particularly support the increased penalties for evening shifts, for night shifts and weekends, the extra day off. I think it's a fair offer.
The union says a 3% pay rise doesn't measure up,
Very nice.
regardless of what's thrown on top. James Carmody, ABC News.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now it's time to go to our daily India report.
Welcome to the Daily India Report that brings you reports, interviews, features and more on India and the Indian diaspora. India holds a G20 invoice briefing in Andaman and Nicobar Islands as it prepares to assume the presidency of the G20 on December 1st.
India on November 26 held a briefing for envoys from G20 nations in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands as it prepares to assume the presidency of the G20 on December 1st, 2022. India takes over leadership of the multilateral body from Indonesia, where the recent G20 summit concluded in Bali. The briefing was held at Swaraj Dweep, a part of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. A press release by the Ministry of External Affairs stated over 40 missions and international organizations participated in the program. They were given detailed briefings by G20 Sherpa Shri Amitabh Kant and Chief G20 Coordinator Mr. Harshvardhan Shringla on the substantive, operational and logistical aspects of various G20 interactions during India's presidency. Talks at the briefing revolved around areas such as public digital goods and digital infrastructure, climate action, climate finance and technology collaborations, clean, sustainable, just, affordable and inclusive energy transition, accelerated progress on sustainable development goals, women-led development and multilateral reforms. Discussions also looked at the state of play in the finance track deliberations. Foreign missions were also briefed about protocol, visa, security and travel for the G20 summit. The briefing also involved a series of cultural activities centered around the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Foreign envoys were briefed about the culture and history of the islands. The MEA press release further stated, in addition to the briefing, delegates also took part in a yoga session, followed by a beach cleaning activity which symbolized our pro-planet, sustainable lifestyles and One Earth approach. Delegates also visited the historic cellular jail at Port Blair, where a large number of our unsung heroes were imprisoned for the cause of our freedom struggle. The visit concluded with a cultural program by local artists.
Egypt President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has accepted India's invitation to be the chief guest at the upcoming Republic Day celebrations in January 2023.
Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has agreed to be the chief guest at the upcoming Republic Day celebrations in January 2023. India's Ministry of External Affairs confirmed this on November 27th. Prime Minister Narendra Modi had sent a formal invitation to al-Sisi, which was handed over to the Egyptian President by External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar on October 16th. At the invitation of Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, HE Mr. Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, President of the Arab Republic of Egypt, will be the chief guest at India's Republic Day celebrations on January 26, 2023, the MEA statement read. This is the first time that the President of the Arab Republic of Egypt will be the chief guest at our Republic Day, it added. India and Egypt enjoy warm and friendly relations based on civilizational and deep-rooted people-to-people ties. Both countries are celebrating the 75th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations this year. Egypt has also been invited as a guest country during India's presidency of G20 in 2022-23.
India and Australia begin their annual joint military exercise Austra Hind at Bikaner in Rajasthan state. The exercise will be held from November 28th to December 11th, 2022.
The Indian and Australian armies on November 28, 2022 began their bilateral training exercise Austra Hind in Rajasthan. This is the first exercise in the series of Austra Hind with the participation of all arms and services contingent from both armies. While the Australian Army contingent comprises soldiers from the 13th Brigade of the 2nd Division, the Indian Army is represented by troops from the Dogra Regiment. The exercise aims at building positive military relations, imbibing each other's best practices and promoting the ability to operate together while undertaking multi-domain operations in semi-desert terrain under a UN peace enforcement mandate. This joint exercise will also enable the two armies to share best practices in tactics, techniques and procedures for conducting tactical operations at company and platoon level for neutralizing hostile threats. Training on new generation equipment and specialist weapons including snipers, surveillance and communication equipment to achieve a high degree of situational awareness apart from casualty management, casualty evacuation and planning logistics at the battalion, company level are also planned.
India's senior Congress leader Jairam Ramesh has warned its Rajasthan unit that the party, if needed, will take tough calls to decide on a solution that will strengthen the party.
Amid the fresh mudslinging between Rajasthan Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot and his ex-deputy Sachin Pilot, senior Congress member Jairam Ramesh on November 27 said that if needed, the Congress party would not shy away from taking tough decisions to strengthen the organization in the state. Gehlot had last week said Pilot was a traitor and could not replace him, drawing a sharp response from his former deputy, who said such mudslinging would not help. Gehlot also said Pilot had revolted against Congress in 2020 and alleged that he tried to topple the state government. Ramesh, who was in Indore as part of the Bharat Jodo Yatra, said, "On the issue of Rajasthan, we will decide on a solution which will strengthen our organization. For this, if we have to take tough decisions, we will take. If a compromise has to be made, then it will be done." Ramesh also said the Congress leadership is considering a proper solution to the Rajasthan issue. He said that only the Congress leadership will decide the time frame for it. The party needs both Gehlot and Pilot. Speaking on the Bharat Jodo Yatra, Ramesh said like other states, it would also be successful in Rajasthan.
Adding the 9th destination on its network, Akasa Air began its flight operations on the Pune-Bengaluru route on November 26th.
India's newest airline, Akasa Air, began its flight operations between Pune and Bengaluru on November 26th. Pune, the carrier's second city in Maharashtra after Mumbai, is the 9th location on its network. The airline is now operating 2 daily flights on the Bengaluru-Pune route, but starting December 10th, there will be additional daily flights connecting the 2 IT centers. Akasa Air announced earlier in November that Visakhapatnam would become the 10th location on its network. Flights between the 2 cities are expected to begin on December 10th, and a second frequency will be added on December 12th. Since its launch in August 2022, Akasa Air has been progressively scaling up its operations and by mid-December expects to cross over 450 weekly flights on a total of 14 routes across 10 cities: Ahmedabad, Bengaluru, Kochi, Chennai, Mumbai, Delhi, Guwahati, Agartala, Pune and Visakhapatnam. This rapid expansion of cities, routes and frequencies is in line with the airline's vision of adopting a phased yet rapid approach to growing its network across India.
Foreign portfolio investors have started to flock back to the Indian market as they invest around $3.9 billion in Indian equities in the month of November.
Foreign portfolio investors are coming back to Indian equity markets and have rediscovered their liking for the country as they made a net investment of $3.9 billion in November in the hope of an end to the aggressive rate hikes and positivity about overall macroeconomic trends. According to experts, after remaining net sellers in August and September, foreign portfolio investors are unlikely to be major sellers now. Rising expectations of aggressive rate hike cycles nearing an end on a relatively easing inflationary curve, better than expected US macroeconomics data and resilience of the Indian economy compared to global counterparts are also driving FPI inflows. According to data available with the depositories, FPIs invested a net sum of $3.9 billion in equities during November 1st to 25th. In August, FPIs were net buyers to the tune of $6.3 billion and they purchased equities worth nearly $612 million in July. Prior to the positive trend, FPIs remained net sellers for 9 straight months starting October 2021 amid a continuous rise in the dollar. Going ahead, FPI flows are expected to remain volatile in the near term given the geopolitical concerns. So far this year, the total outflow by FPIs in equities stood at $167.7 billion.
Varun Dhawan excels as the lead character in the horror comedy Bhediya as the film releases across India in Hindi, Tamil and Telugu languages.
Horror and comedy are two of the toughest genres to pull off, with each susceptible to falling flat on the face if not done right. This is where Varun Dhawan's starrer Bhediya comes up aces. Director Amar Kaushik, who helmed the horror comedies 3 by the same banner, handles both genres skillfully in his latest outing and strikes a fine balance to deliver a movie that's spine-chilling in some instances, rib-tickling in almost all, and leaves you with something to think about. Monsters and creatures in films can often turn more spoofy than spooky in some films, but not in Bhediya. Varun's transformation from human to werewolf is convincing and terrifying. The film has many jump scares and the background score only makes things scarier. Varun is top-notch as the shape-shifting wolf. He gives this part his all and it shows. Deepak Dobriyal as Panda also delivers a notable performance. Kriti Sanon's character as the wet Dr. Anika could have been better, but she adds her bit to the drama and comedy. The movie's first half is extremely gripping. It perfectly sets the tone for what will unfold soon and also brings in a sense of intrigue. However, the second half seems stretched and loose loses momentum. While it focuses on conservation and man-animal conflict, it briefly touches upon the stereotyping of the people of the Northeast and how they have to often live with the outsider label. The film reminds us of our animal instincts and how there could be a bhediya in all of us. But how we wish to unleash it for better or worse is up to us. Beauty and the Beast are all in us. We only have to look deep within. The film was released in Hindi, Tamil and Telugu on November 25th and is best viewed in 3D.
After the success of the song Jeda Nasha, T-Series has released another dance number, Aap Jaisa Koi, featuring Ayushmann and Malaika Arora from the film An Action Hero.
Ever since the trailer of the film An Action Hero was released, Ayushmann Khurrana has been in the limelight. T-Series recently launched the film's sizzling number, Jeda Nasha, featuring Ayushmann and Noora Fatehi, and are back to hog the attention of the viewers with the song Aap Jaisa Koi. Featuring Ayushmann and Malaika Arora, Aap Jaisa Koi is a foot-tapping number with a hint of charm that the duo adds to it. Amid a western and party backdrop, the song essentially gives us a retro vibe where Ayushmann and Malaika dance to the number in perfect synergy. Best known for her hit dance numbers, Malaika gives us a sensational song with her interesting pair with Ayushmann Khurrana. The song is written by Indivar and Tanish Bagchi, with its music given by Tanish Bagchi and Bidu, and sung in the astonishing voices of Zahra S. Khan and Altamash Faridi. The song is directed and choreographed by Vijay Ganguly. Playing the lead in the film, Ayushmann Khurrana said, Aap Jaisa Koi is a foot-tapping track and I'm sure it is going to be a chart-buster this party season. I enjoyed shaking a leg with Malaika and learned some grooves. With its slick action and offbeat sense of humor, An Action Hero is slated to hit the big screen on December 2nd. Directed by Anirudh Iyer, An Action Hero is produced by Anand L. Rai, Bhushan Kumar and Krishan Kumar.
That's all for the bulletin of the Daily India Report.
And thank you very much for that report, Ankita. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now it's time to go to our daily functions and reports. So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, up to date on Australian Indian Radio. Hey, it's been wonderful having your company today on this 29th day of November, and 24 degrees and cloudy, and there's a little bit of showers around Brisbane, a bit of an hazy sort of a day here, not your typical Brisbane day. Well, ladies and gentlemen, until tomorrow, it's goodbye from us. Don't forget that tomorrow with the two segments, the 9 a.m. news, and then at 10 a.m. we'll have the real estate update with Usha Chandra of GlobeNet Realty. Until then, it's goodbye from us.